Thank you very much, Samantha, and welcome. We are small, but we are mighty, and I appreciate you all sticking around for one of the last presentations of the year for something that I think is the most important topic of all, which is cash. Makes the world go round. University wouldn't operate without it. And it is something that is near and dear to my heart because I am the university cash manager and accounting services. And one of my most important tasks is to make sure that the university has enough cash and that cash is in the right bank accounts at the right time. Who here got paid recently? Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks. Not kidding. No, it takes a lot of people to pull off something like that. You know, we are a multi-billion-dollar organization, and you saw more than $1 billion of that is in research. So one of the most important things that we can do is to support the research community and their cash needs. And a lot of the research that we do around the world are countries and economies that operate almost entirely on a cash basis. So, you know, cash advances is something that is critical for you all to get the job done. So with that, I just want to thank the other co-presenters today, Samantha Thompson with the Office of Sponsor Program, Amanda Chang, and also not here today, but also contributed on this presentation is Kiana Kimbrough. Thursday is our day that we do all of our pay cycles and our funding, so she had to stay in the office to do some work today, but very much appreciate you all being here. All right, let's get started. So this is the agenda. We're going to do an overview of cash advances. And, you know, this is UNC. So every different department organization is going to have their own way of doing things. So there is a way to obtain a cash advance and to reconcile it through OSP. And there's a way to obtain a cash advance and to reconcile it if you're not using a project ID. So we're just going to talk about overall cash advances and how you can obtain one, use it, and reconcile it. So the different processes that we have within finance and officer sponsor programs, cash advance reconciliation and that process. We will play UNC's least favorite game show, Will It Reconcile, later today. So I hope you're ready for that. We'll put the silly in account reconciliation. All right, OSP cash advance form review. We'll cover that. The OSP form reminders, resources, and a Q&A. So cash advances 101. A cash advance is essentially making funding available to university staff in anticipation of a university expense. The cash advance policy for the university, basically, it's fairly broad, and it allows you to obtain a cash advance to meet certain business expenses and needs. If you need to host foreign visitors, you can obtain a cash advance for that. If you need to pay study subjects, you can obtain a cash advance for that. So there's a host of different things that you can use a cash advance for. Typically, a cash advance is going to be made out to a university employee, and that's going to be paid to you into your personal bank account via an ACH payment. And then advances must be reconciled within 60 days via a journal entry. And we always recommend that you don't get a cash advance until you reasonably expect to use that advance within 30 days. So, like I said, when can you use a cash advance? Very broad. Group field trips, purchasing food, materials for large groups, functions, compensating study subjects, other exceptional activities. So we had to throw that catch-all in there. And then the policy, if you want to look it up, is policy on cash advances 307. And there's also a procedure on that. We rewrote this policy recently to kind of give you a step-by-step procedure within procedure 307.1 to kind of show you exactly what needs to happen to reconcile your cash advance and what forms are required, things like that. So when is it prohibited? So basically, you can obtain a cash advance for a lot of purposes, but there are specific instances when it's prohibited. And it's all listed here. You know, we can't use it for payment to an employee for services, for a payment to an independent contractor, guest lecturers for services, cash award to an employee. You are permitted, or have been in the past, permitted to get a cash advance for some employee rewards, as long as it meets the de minimis thresholds for the IRS. And when you go to reconcile that, the general ledger account for the gift, it is given to payroll for reporting on their W-2 or for 1099 purposes. Any cash awards for an employees in another state for payroll or another agency, like you can't get a cash advance to give to a UNC hospital employee or UNC Health. You can't use it for event tickets, athletic events, performing arts. So it can't be like, hey, I want to go to the Canes game. I'm a little short this week, so let's get that cash advance and go have fun. Sorry, it's not allowed. And you can't use it for some travel reimbursements. So we prefer that you go through the concur process or obtain a travel advance for that, with a little carve out that is if you're hosting foreign visitors, there is an opportunity for you to go through dining services if you need to, and they can give a meal card to folks that are going to be eating on campus. We prefer that you do that, but if that isn't going to meet your needs, then you can obtain a cash advance for hosting foreign visitors and providing for their meals. We just ask that you look at the per diem rates in state and that you abide by that. So how do you request a cash advance? There's some forms here. Essentially, you fill out the form, you attach it to a voucher, and that's going to get paid. And here's a couple of forms on here. We may change it because we really like OSP's forms, the ones that Samantha made. We think they're really cool, and we're probably going to start using those really soon. So how do you request a cash advance? Again, as I said, you enter a campus voucher. For OSP, you're going to use an advance account 559510. Don't confuse that with a former Bank of America advance 559520. Don't confuse that with the prepaid card advance 559540. And please don't confuse it with the other Tango advance 559550. So just look it up, and we're here to help if you need it. If you're using the trust fund or residual, anything other than a non-contracting grant, that general ledger account is going to be different from the voucher. It's going to be 113920, a general ledger cash account. That in the system is going to require you to put in the supplier ID number, which is in the open item key field. So an open item key is basically, if we were to use it the way that it was intended, we would track our receivables in the system by putting an open item key in for the supplier. So, if someone owes us $100, we would log that receivable into the system for $100. They paid us 80. We would record the deposit for $80. And then the system would say, well, this person still owes you $20. So that's the purpose of an open item key. We use that to track our cash advances. So essentially, your supplier ID in the AP system is going to be what you put in the open item key. It's not your PID. Just to make it even more complicated, you have to look that up and put that in. If you need help, we're happy to help. And then we ask that you use the cash advance naming convention in the voucher's journal line description. So you would put in your last name, the amount of money that you're receiving on this cash advance, and then the month and the year. And the way that the purpose for doing that is if you're receiving multiple cash advances in a month or different amounts, we can then track each cash advance individually if you're doing it. So that's a lot of information. We'll get more into it later. With that, I want to hand it over to OSP so they could talk about their cash advance request process.
Thanks so much, Brett. Okay, so I wanted to run through and let you all know the process. And this might sound very similar to you all if you've attended. We've talked about Tango advances. We've talked about P-card advances, cash advance requests. We try to make it as similar as possible. So you want to start off by completing a OSP cash advance request form. You'll submit it to our sponsor programs inbox that does the intake. That team member will then create a RAM tracker that will be shared with the department submitter, as well as our sponsor program specialist that will be reviewing it, so that throughout that workflow process, there's a lot of transparency. The SPS will then review the requests for completeness, allowability, is checking to make sure that budget is there, checking to make sure that the form is completed accurately, we have all the signatures. And then once it's approved, the SPS will return the form to the department submitter. It's usually within about 3 business days from the time that we've gotten the receipt of the form or the last communication with that department. Importantly, because there is a next process in actually getting the cash advance request into the voucher system, you need to make sure that within 10 business days of receiving that approved form, you go ahead and submit that the campus voucher. And then once that happens, our OSP pre-audit tech will review that again. And the reason that happens is because at the time of that review, it's to make sure that when you've submitted it, if time has passed, say it's not as close as the 10 days and it's a little bit further beyond, we want to make sure at the time that we're looking at that, the budget is still there, because things happen, personnel charges especially. And then once it's approved, it will move to the accounts payable team to fully disperse. And just another note to make sure, since we can't self-approve vouchers anymore, you want to make sure you do take the time and submit that in advance. So all departmental reviews can be done. And then with that, we're actually going to go through a wonderful presentation that Samantha does, and she walks through the form itself and making sure that she points out the tips and tricks for completing it. So with that, I will hand it over to her.
Thank you. So like Amanda said earlier, if you've been in any of the other presentations, I'm sure that you have seen something that looks very similar to the form that I'm about to show you, maybe every time. I promise I can do this. Hold on. Sorry. Got it. All right, there we go. So this is going to be very similar to the Tango and the P-card request form. We're going to have the instructions at the top, and then we're going to have the general department information that we need. So currently, like Bro was saying, there are two cash advance forms, one for non-sponsored and one for sponsored funds. So this is the one for sponsored funds. So we're going to ask for project ID. We're going to ask for the contact email and the contact information of the department, who is also the advance recipient. So if you're an individual that's receiving the cash advance, we need your information here. We also are going to need the department reconciliation contact. We know that departments, you know, they can be large and complex. They can have one person that does everything. They can have 5 people that do different things. So we just want to make sure that we're reaching out to the correct person whenever we're asking for, well, for them to reconcile the advance. So something that we've noticed as we've gone through and that we received these payments, and we tried to update this form as questions have come in, but study subject payments are going to be the most common. And that is cash, gift cards, prepaid cards, preloaded cards that you need. So this is what you're going to use to pay study subjects normally. We also have the option for subrecipient payments. That's going to be if you need to pay a subrecipient, and that does get reviewed by our subaward team. So it is very important that you complete our forms in the order that the questions are, because it generates different fields for you to complete, but it also generates different agreements. So this is especially important on the cash advance form. So if you click study subject payment, you see, come on. We're going to ask you for the total amount. We're going to ask you for the fund and source. We're going to ask you for the department ID and the project ID, and then we're going to want to know why it's necessary. If you do subrecipient payments, we're going to ask you for the same information, but we're also going to ask if it's for a foreign entity or not. So the reason is because if it's for a foreign entity, it's going to generate the cash advance agreement in language that talks about 90 days of the issuance of the advance payment. If it's not, we're going to ask you if it's for a community partner. If it is for a community partner, it's going to generate the language saying that it's 60 days of issuance. If it is neither of these things, please stop. Do not pass go. You cannot do a request for subrecipient payment if it's not either of these things. So and the other thing to keep in mind is if it's a subrecipient payment, we're going to ask for the principal investigator. If it is not, if it's for a study subject payment, we're going to ask for the advance recipient information there. So if you go through, we're going to ask for the non-reconciled chart field string, which is a non-sponsored chart field string. You cannot reconcile it to non-sponsored funds if it's not being used on the project. So anything that's not reconciled within Connect Carolina, we're going to ask you to move it off the project. So the next section is going to be our signature section. We ask for the principal investigator. This is where the department contact or advanced recipient signs. And this is where the department finance leader chair signs as well. We want to make sure that everyone in the department who needs to know knows that you're doing a cash advance and that this is going to need to be reconciled. Once you do that and you submit it to our office, like Amanda said, the RAM tracker is going to be created. The SPS is going to review it. They're going to either approve or deny it. If they deny it, they're going to put in the notes why they denied it and send it back to you. If they approve it, they're going to sign it and send it back to you. That's when you can move forward and create the voucher. So that is our cash advance form. Like I said, it's very similar to the other forms that we do. So a couple of reminders about our forms. They do not open in browsers. They are smart forms. I know that most of you probably heard my spill on this before, but you have to download it to your desktop to use them. And depending on how Chrome is set up now with the updates, it either uploads in the upper right or it's in the lower left-hand corner, depending on if you've changed the settings. But either way, you need to open it to the desktop. Something else to keep in mind is you may not be the first person to sign it. You may be the second or third person to sign it. Sometimes there are problems with signatures, depending on how people save it. So if you go to click on the signature box and it's not letting you add your signature, that's okay. You can go to the tools section, the certificate section, and then you can click add and add your electronic signature. Something that I did want to point out is that once all the signatures are done and once you've received the approval from sponsored projects, when you're going to upload that to the voucher, it is better to print to PDF and save the form that way. That will allow you to open it in a web browser, because when you save it like that, it removes all of the dynamic pieces of the form. So you won't be able to change it or fill it out or edit it once you do this. So just keep that in mind. But as an attachment in a voucher, you'll be able to open it in a web browser and see it. So that is my form. So I'm going to turn it back over to, not sure, Brett or Amanda, about reconciling the cash advance.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, sorry. Not savvy.
No.
Thank you. Okay, so now we'll go into reconciling the cash advance. So you've received the cash advance. You've hopefully used it for the reasons intended. Not our Kane's came, but some study subjects came and they did what they did, and you've compensated them. But now we need to move the advance from the general ledger advance account to the study subject expense account. So we need to reconcile it. So there are some forms involved, of course. So the non-sponsored project cash advance reconciliation form is listed there, and it's attached in our cash advance policy. And then the sponsored project cash advance reconciliation form is listed at that link on OSP's website. So, and a couple things to remember: if your expenses equal the amount of your voucher, you got $1,000 on the cash advance, you spent, $1,000, you've given that to the study subjects, and you're done. What you would just do is you would submit a reconciling journal entry, a JCA, and you would attach the forms that are needed, your expenses, evidence that you've, given the funds out, and then you'd reconcile your advance. What if your expenses are greater than the voucher? You need more money. Well, in that case, you would go back and get another voucher for another advance, and you can get some additional funds. And then after you have that and you've spent all of it, then you'll submit your reconciling journal entry after that a voucher has been approved and paid to you. If your expenses were less than the voucher, you got $1,000, but you only spent $900. What do? Well, you take the $100 and you create a deposit in Connect Carolina, or your finance staff will do this. And you want to use the exact same chart field string using all of the exact same chart field elements that were on the voucher in that deposit. And then you'll take the deposit to the cashier's office and deposit that check. So again, it is critical, if you're using a non-OSP cash advance, with OSP, it's a little easier, a little more forgiving, but we would ask that you use on your reconciling journal entry. No,
we're not.
Okay. They're not less forgiving. All right, so it is critical that the chart field values to include, a program code, cost code, open item, if applicable, be the exact same on your voucher as it is on your deposit and in your journal entry. So again, to get it all to reconcile, it all has to be the exact same. And this is where we get to play UNC's least favorite game, Will It Reconcile? Y'all didn't think you were going to be on a game show when you walked in here to this presentation, but you're in it now. All right. So you'll see up here, the top row is the description, the titles. The second row is the voucher that you got. You got a cash advance. You use that fund, that source, account 113920, your department ID. How much money you got was $1,250, and your open item key was $15,480. Program code was 1,000, and you had that cost code. On your settlement journal, you wrote in the journal line description, due from employee, and you used that chart field string. You used $1,125 of your $1,250 advance, and then you returned in your deposit $125. And that is the chart field you used on the deposit. Whoever gets this right, I will give you $1,000 US dollars worth of Albanian real. Big money, big money. Will it reconcile? Yes or no? No. Why? I heard that the deposit used a different one. So yeah, on the deposit, the source is different. You also left out the cost code 2 on the deposit. What else? You, on the settlement journal, left off the program code and the cost code. So the answer is no, it won't reconcile and you lose. All right, let's try one more time. So this one, you've gotten this voucher. On the journal line description, you've put in your name, how much it was, the month and the date. You've used that chart field. Again, you took out $1,250. You only used $1,125 and you returned $125. Will it reconcile? I hear yes. All right. The answer is yes, it will. But you're still a loser because you got to go in and do all this work and reconcile. Okay. So again, just to show you, if you really want to get into the weeds, essentially, after you've submitted your journal entry, if you're using a non-OSP funds, after your journal is reviewed and approved, then we in accounting services go into the open item key maintenance. We look up your open item and then we reconcile your open item. And that, again, making sure that the voucher and the journal and the deposit, it all equals. And if anything's left off, it's not going to reconcile. And it basically shows to us that you still owe the university money, even though you might not. But the open item is showing that you still do. So just make sure you get it right. If you have questions about this, this is very complicated stuff. Again, please reach out to us. Here's some useful links and some queries that'll help you. So if you want to know any of your non-OSP cash advances, if you have any, some public queries that you can use to look at your departmental open items. If you have a question, you want us to run these queries, we're happy to do that for you in cash management. Just email us at cash_management@unc.edu. We'll give that to you. It'll probably have cash advances that have been unreconciled going back to the year 2013. Like Chancellor Folt, apparently, according to that, still owes us money in a cash advance. So these are the different queries that you can use. With that, happy to answer any questions.
So we do have one question from Zoom. And this is something that we've all seen. But the question was, I have a cash advance, the expenses were 65 cents less than the advance. So what do we do?
Yeah, in that instance, if the expenses were less than the advance, then hopefully you still have paper checks laying around somewhere in a dusty bottom drawer of your apartment or house. And, you got to take that and make a deposit. I believe the cashier's office will also accept change. So if you show up with 65 cents, Brooke used to work in the cashier's office. She's nodding her head yes. So you would take said 65 cents to SASB, give it to the cashier to deposit, and you would also give them a copy of your deposit transmittal report that you, of course, have known and know how to do and have created in Connect Carolina for your deposit. And that deposit has the same fund source, account, department, cost code 1, 2, 3, program code, everything as your voucher. That's what you do.
So as a side note, OSP does not accept cash for deposit.
I actually was just going to add in on that. However, we will do for you. So you just have to drop your check with the OSP deposit memo, and we'll do that aspect for you. If it's truly something that is cents, 50 cents, 65 cents, we will give you the deposit slip and have you go to the tax office to drop that off. So you don't have to write a 65 cents or pay $1 for a money order to cover the 65 cents.
Speaking of money orders, we do have a question. Do they accept money orders or cashier checks?
Pretty sure they accept cashier's checks, cashier checks. I'm not 100% sure about money orders, but I would assume the answer is yes.
Yeah,
I don't
so
think they turn away money.
just confirm with the cashier's office before you take anything other than what is commonly accepted.
General question about cash.
Yes, ma'am.
Never study. You know, I know it's a limited to, for one individual, but I've run into the situation where they overspent the original cash advance, so we have to create a second advance more than we true it up. In the meantime, they need a third advance to continue on issuing the cash, the payment. And I've had a lot of problems, those not going through, getting denied, coming back and forth, and it's just very time consuming. So I don't know, if there's some additional training that can happen down at OSP with the periodic folks or whatever, I gave a detailed explanation.
I was just going to ask that.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I've given a very detailed explanation and it provided the original voucher number, everything, and just trimming it up. And it still got denied, and then gave them the same exact explanation again, and they did a process that, that has to please the week and a half to do it.
I might suggest, and this happens, we can all speak to this, with our office, with the department, when you're onboarding or training new staff, there are some, we're all human, so there's been some of those. But in a situation like that where you've got some complications, and it might be kind of unique, I would contact Casey Lemon. And we get an email from her explaining that it's contract, with her understanding of the situation, yes, if you get approved, attach it with your voucher submission, because the periodic submission is going to be looking at the department. And if there's something that's clearly there from that periodic manager saying this is an exception case, it's cleared out, then you don't run the risk if there's someone potentially you reviewing it, that it's gonna go. Okay.
Good question. Any more?
Just one of those vouchers, are they the terms net 30?
The
Person gets the cash in 30 days. Kind of standard net 30.
usually if you've submitted a voucher and it goes through the approval process, if it's approved in the system by AP, it'll get picked up in the next week's pay cycle. So if you have a voucher that's been approved as of noon on or in close of business Wednesday, then the next Thursday is when that voucher would pay. Now, there are exceptions to that. If it's a study subject payment, in that case, we're going to expedite that payment. That's going to be different. But it's the regular cash advance. If it's approved by close of business Wednesday, the next Thursday it will be paid, and then Friday it will show up in your bank account as an ACH payment.
So they recognize that that's cash advance needs to go out.
Yeah, so the only times where I've seen some issues with that, there's some folks that you actually enter in the wrong thing. Like you might have wanted, and I need this by X, Y, Z date, but then it entered it wrong and pushes it out. I believe it's default 30 days or 6 days. There is a default to the voucher, but that is something I've seen before, where someone just entered a date further out.
And so sometimes that can be like,
Yeah, it defaults in the system, I believe, to net 30. You can, and AP may not like me for saying this, you can reach out to them and say, this is a critical AC payment, cash advance is needed now. Can you please include this in the express ACH pay cycle? And if you use those magic terms, then maybe they will be okay with that. Or can you issue this as an express check? In which case they can run an express check pay cycle and have a check issued.
if you truly need like that type of expediting, you can also message either me directly, OSP help, sponsor programs. And we're happy to all work with, particularly Jen's team to say, this is something critical. And they really do work with us, especially when it comes to it's a reporting factor. You know, we've got the report, we've got the codes, yeah, we can bill and get paid from the sponsor. They're happy to work with us.
And again, cash advances is just one way to get paid. You know, there's Tango, there's going to be Green Fire. There's pretty soon we're going to do digital disbursements as soon as we hopefully can get some more staff. So we can text or email payments. There's going to be a vendor portal that's coming out that if you want to have study subjects get set up, they can enter in their information in that vendor portal, and then we could send payments to them. So there's a plethora of ways to get paid. Yes, ma'am.
There at any point going to be a time when the money isn't going to have to go into someone's personal bank account to them distribute payments?
Yeah, so there's a couple of other methods that we can use. If some of those other methods, if it needs to be cash, you might qualify for Impress checking account, and we're kind of have opened that door a little bit more. We were very restrictive, but now we're kind of analyzing that. And I think Mr. Stats, I owe you an Impress account. No, I'll get that to you. So that is an option. It's basically just a checking account that, departments own and can issue checks to folks. One idea that we're toying with is perhaps like a cash window office at the AOB, where you show up on a certain day and you say, well, I need $100 for study subject payments. You come up, give us a chart field, and we'll charge that, and we can give you $100 in cash. There's security concerns, internal control concerns, things like that, but it is something we're kicking around internally within our study subject payment committee. But we are increasingly in a cashless society, but we understand that it's getting harder for us to provide cash and those methods to you, but we understand that there are populations out there that is the way that they want to get paid, and really the only way that is going to be useful to them. A check isn't going to work, a prepaid card or an electronic payment just isn't going to work for them.
Yeah, I know it's hard to believe when we're kind of sitting in this information superhighway, but we have patients living in rural North Carolina who do not have computers at home. I had a coordinator come to me yesterday and she said, I can't get this Tango because they don't even have a computer to go on and do it. So I just want to make sure we're always kind of keeping that patient in mind when we're thinking about all of these different platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. Good feedback.
And I also don't love having money from the state that's supposed to go to these people in my personal banking account.
Yep.
I have 7 open cash advances to $2,500, $3,000 going in. So if there's a way that we can make it a little bit different, so that onus is on us to have them. Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I think we mentioned in this is there is a kind of a governance committee on participant payment. And so it really is a group that is working to brainstorm a lot of different ideas so that we can put it up. Because please, everyone, that should not be the way that we do business at an institution, especially with as much research as we do. So definitely it is something that, and as Brett mentioned too, the thing that they're thinking about too.
Any more questions? No, thank you for your participation.